Welcome back. My name is Jeff, and this is Wordfully Yours. So, the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi is exactly what it sounds like. Well, to backtrack just a second, if you don't know what a kaiju is, Godzilla. Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, all those Japanese monsters in the movies. The Kaiju Preservation Society is exactly what it sounds like. Think, those National Geographic documentaries where the people go out and, way out into the jungles of Africa and they find these lions and they do all their biologist stuff and they tag in and they weigh and they measure and release and they send on and they make sure that they can, make sure that they have what they need to, National Geographic things. Think of that only with giant monsters. That's what it is. It's done through the new guy trope, whereas they explain the world to the new guy, thereby explaining it to you. There are an infinite number of universes existing parallel to each other. In the 1950s, the nuclear testing and all the nuclear bombs that they set off thinned the barrier in between our universe and another universe where these monsters exist. These monsters have their own nuclear reactors that do nuclear things inside of them. So as our nuclear bombs went off on our side and their nuclear reactors did their things on their side, it thinned the barrier and allowed a kaiju to move from one universe to the other into ours. Once it came into ours, it lived for a time, walking through the ocean and eventually died and washed up on shore. The stories of it, made their way to Japan and inspired the Godzilla movie. Cool, right? The whole thing takes place during the COVID lockdown, during the Trump presidency. It adds to the legitimacy of the fanciful nature of the world, I guess. Giant monsters that can't exist because of the square cube law, which they do explain in the book. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically why animals can't get so big because they'll overheat. By cementing it in the real world of the COVID lockdown and the Trump presidency, that adds legitimacy to something that just can't exist. They even allow tours for politicians and billionaires and donors that come over to the Kaiju Earth side. They even allude to Trump's adult children coming over and wanting to hunt them. And they don't name them as Trump children, probably because Mr. Scalzi doesn't want to get sued. But that's fine. We all know what he means. I love the humor in it. I love how John Scalzi tries to add a scientific basis for how these monsters exist by explaining the square cube law, explaining the difference between a hypothesis and a theory, explaining how organisms are basically ecosystems in and of themselves. The kaiju are just that much bigger. I love how John Scalzi builds the world of the Kaiju Earth, explains how it works, everything between the pheromones that they use as communication, the parasites that do various jobs for the giant kaiju, the other organisms on the ground, such as these giant tree crabs. John Scalzi is so good at world building. He did a great job in Old Man's War. He did a great job of it in Starter Villain. I really think he came into his light with this book. All the world building is done, build as you go, explain something, story, explain something, story, explain something, story, on and on and on till the very end. And that end is so fitting and uses all of the world that he spent all that time building. Wonderfully done. As a score, I gave it a 9.8 out of 10. The only way it could have been a perfect 10 is if he had somehow managed to involve talking cats. If it had talking cats, it would have been a perfect 10. Other than that, it had everything you're looking for in such a good story. But I may be biased because, I grew up on Godzilla and Rodan and Mothra and all those Japanese monsters, and this book just let me, just kind of brought back that wonder of all those movies I spent my whole youth growing up on. So, thanks for watching. May your library be fully stocked and well-funded, and I will see you later.
The Christmas tree's on fire, Santa's holding the lighter. My parents are both liars, I got gifts but one subscriber.